Good afternoon, Oak Grove. Happy Thursday. Welcome to this week's installment of the Midweek Update series here, where I just pop into your devices in the middle of the week to say hello and keep the church on our consciousness for the other 6.5 days of the week that we're not in worship, because that's such an important thing for us to do. Thanks for taking a few minutes to join me. There was no Midweek Update video last week because I was out on vacation with my wife, and it was pointed out to me that I didn't announce in advance that there wasn't going to be one. I apologize for that. I don't have a very good track record on here of letting you folks know when to expect the next video and when not to do that. I need to get better at that. Apologies. It honestly just slips my mind a lot of the time. So I apologize for that. I will try to get a little better in the future about notifying you when to expect a video and when not to expect one. I am sitting here in my office right now, and I brought a visual aid for my discussion with you all today. I have my handy-dandy Citizens Bank umbrella above my head here. You can kind of see the logo for it back here. Why do I have the umbrella? The umbrella is a visual aid just to chat with you all about how my vacation went last week. A good number of people have already said, "Oh, Pastor, how was your trip last week? Did you have fun?" So it poured down rain torrentially nearly the entire week, and it was also pretty chilly, and all in all, the weather stunk. The weather in the Pocono Mountains was terrible for almost the whole week. Wednesday was the one exception. Wednesday wasn't too bad. The weather was tolerable on Wednesday. One of my favorite things to do at the resort that Julie and I stay for our anniversary vacation every year is to just sit by Lake Wallenpaupack and sit there and read and enjoy the sun and the sound of the water. And I just love doing that. It is one of the most peaceful places in my life. We go to this same resort for our anniversary vacation nearly every year. We've gone almost every year since we've been married. We've only missed a couple of them. One due to COVID, another one due to I had surgery scheduled one year and I missed it because of that. But one of my favorite things to do is sit by the lake and just read by the water up there. And I got to do that on Wednesday. The rest of the week was a washout. Tuesday, we had a tornado warning with the local news popping into our devices to tell us that there was a funnel cloud that apparently passed right overhead of us but didn't touch down. Somehow, amazingly enough, we didn't lose power, even though the trees were blowing sideways at the resort and the rain was coming down in sheets. Power grid up there is evidently pretty hardy. A little tougher than it is here in New Sewickley, I'm sorry to have to say. And so we just hunkered down in our hotel room and just, waited for the warning to pass over. But so I brought the umbrella, as a way of sharing. I brought the umbrella to answer the question for those who will ask, "Pastor, how was your vacation?" The umbrella tells you how the vacation went. But, I'm also using that as an object lesson in life. I'm using that as an opportunity to talk a little bit about expectations versus reality. Reality doesn't always turn out exactly the way that we plan for things to go. And, sometimes in life, it is very well intentioned when we do this. But sometimes we just try, and I've done it myself. Many of us are guilty of having done it. We try a little too hard to engineer a perfect experience. We try a little too hard to make sure everything has to go absolutely perfectly today when we're scheduling our off day, when we're scheduling a vacation, when we're scheduling an outing, when we're scheduling an event. Everything has to go just perfectly, right? And then on the flip side, you have to schedule things in advance. Our vacation obviously was something that we booked months ago. Or maybe you're trying to get the day of your wedding. We've got the first wedding that I will have done at Oak Grove coming up in just a couple of weeks on Saturday the 31st. We have a wedding coming up. And obviously a wedding is something that takes months of planning, but what if it rains on your wedding day? Well, they say that's good luck. I'm pretty sure whoever invented that idea was somebody that was trying to sugarcoat the fact that it rained on your wedding day. But, in life, experiences don't come out perfectly. That's just the way of life. That is just the way things are. And, sometimes I think it's an opportunity for us to practice gratitude as an intentional discipline and say, I'm going to make the best of my circumstances regardless. So even if it's pouring down rain on my vacation, what are the things that my spouse and I can do indoors to appreciate our vacation? Well, as it happens, up at that resort, There's all kinds of things that you can do up there. Up at that resort where we like to stay for our anniversary, there's all kinds of things indoors that you can do. They've got recreational centers with pool halls, and they've got bowling alleys and swimming pools, and there's a hot tub in your room where we stay. There's all sorts of things to stay busy with up there, even when it's pouring down rain. And so one says to oneself, I'm going to make the best of it, and I'm going to not allow life circumstances to get me down. Because life is only partly what happens to us that is outside of our control. But life is also how we respond to the things that happen to us. I may not be able to control the weather. All I can do is control how I'm going to respond to it. Similarly, I can't control the people in my life. I can't control the people who are rude to me, the people who hurt my feelings. I can't control that, but all I can control is how I'm going to respond to the way that I've been treated or whatever it is that's befallen me. And this may seem like it's unrelated, but I think it's related in a weird way. This is an insight into the odd ways that my brain works. One wonders to oneself, why did God become flesh at the time and place in history when he did? God could have reached a lot more people, a lot more accurately and a lot more quickly today if God came today. If Jesus came today in a day and age where there's Twitter, then Jesus' own words, unadulterated, could have gotten directly out to everybody. But where he came at the time and place in history that he did, we now have to rely on the gospel writers, and we have to rely on the translators of Scripture, and we have to rely on all of that stuff. Wouldn't it have made more sense for God to come today? Well, God's knowledge of history is what it is, and God chose the time that made the most sense to God. There were worse times and places in history that God could have come into, because the ancient Roman Empire was, by the standards of that day, actually pretty advanced and pretty sophisticated. There was a network of roads in the ancient Roman Empire that allowed the disciples to spread the word more quickly and efficiently than they could have at a lot of other places and times in history. But nevertheless, one asks, why didn't Jesus come today, when Jesus probably could have gotten the message out more effectively today than he could back then? We don't know. God's reasons and God's timing are God's reasons and God's timing. But Jesus came at the time and place in history when he did, and he made the best of it and did, what he could with the world that he had accessible to him at that time. And I'd say that the disciples did just fine at getting the word out, because now there are Christians everywhere and the church is extended to every corner of the globe. Does this mean that we can't try to engineer perfect experiences in our lives? No, it does not. Do your best to try to get the special things as right as you can get them. I'm not saying not to do that. I am saying that there's going to be an ant at every picnic if we look hard enough. And at some point in life, you just decide to practice gratitude and say, I'm not going to let the ant at the picnic, nor am I going to let the rainstorms going overhead at my favorite resort stop me from enjoying the world that God has put before me and enjoying all the blessings of abundant life that God wanted for us to have in our lives. And so it's an object lesson for all of us, myself included. I even make this devotion now to try to not look back on my vacation as a bust this year, and try to look back on it positively and see the good in it. We all could stand to be reminded of that every now and then, that there's nothing wrong with trying to get the big events of your life right, but there's also something to be said for life in this sinful, fallen, and broken world is never going to be perfect. But we make the best of what we've got, and we're grateful for what we've got, because that's how God has called us as disciples to respond. That reflection on life is what I've got for you this week, Oak Grove. I will see you all on Sunday morning. Take care, have a wonderful week, and God bless.